Nüüd on mul au teile esitleda Chiu'd, kes on 25-aastase töökogemusega peaarhitekt. Täna toimetab ta paralleelselt 6 erineva projektiga ja need projektid, millega tema tegelevad, need lähevad sealt siis, ütleme, need summad hakkavad sealt kuskil paarisajast miljonist kuni isegi miljarditeni, nii et sellel inimesel on kogemust ja eelkõige, miks ta sai täna siia kutsutud teie ette, on see, et ma näen, et sellel inimesel on ka eestvedamise väga suur kompetents. Nii et Chiu, please, the stage is yours.
Boy, thank you very much for having me here. It's kind of a new experience for me presenting to a group that speaks Estonian. I'm going to be presenting in English. Ergo, thank you very much for translating the slides. I'm not sure which slide presentation is on the screen. So we're going to learn together. I made some changes yesterday. I think this is the first one, not the second one. It's been quite a journey. I'm an architect from the United States. My background is design. I've been involved in Lean in the design and construction of projects since 2005. But before we get started with let's see. Let's go back. Well, there we go. Before we get started with the presentation, a little bit about you, the people that are in the room. Recently, I gave a similar presentation that was sort of a mix of construction and design. So how many people in the room are in the construction field? Are there builders in the field? Okay. How about on the design side, so architects and engineers? All right, good. That makes me feel better. There's a few a few of us in the room. And how many people are academics, either students or, well, how about students first? Students? Okay. Professors? Are there professors in the room? Sure, and my sense is here there's a great mix between the professional work and the academic work, which is great to see. And then the people who are primarily in the field working on projects. How about a show of hands for that? People working on projects? Okay, so some of that. It's a good mix. I think I'm going to learn a lot today. So when people speak about Lean, and this is going to be hard too because I can't read the slides, although I think I can here. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Ergo. When people speak about Lean, one of the common things they say is that it's the elimination of waste. And in order to understand what waste is, Ergo, thank you. In order to understand what waste is, you have to understand what value is. So value is what the customer will pay for. It's important to identify the customer and understand the voice of the customer in order to understand what value is. So today, you are the customer, right? You are the ones who decide what is of value in this work that I'm doing and what is wasteful. And I'll pause a few times in the show, but to understand, to the best that you can guide me, if I'm going too quickly over something, slow down. If I'm going too fast, speed up. Is that right? You know what I'm saying. Use me as a tool to help your understanding with Lean. I've had a lot of experience in it, but I don't know your understanding of it, and I'm here to share what I've learned in a way that's useful to you. How about a couple more questions? So Lean, how many people are familiar with that word and that thinking? I am. Okay. And how many people have used it on a project, so they've done project work with Lean principles? Anybody? Okay, so a few. And then IPD was something we've been talking about, integrated project delivery. Anybody familiar with that word? IPD? Okay, and then same question. How many people have used IPD on a project? All right. So this is very helpful to me. I'm going to go through a little bit of theory on Lean, and you'll see my background as this designer is very interested in I'm very interested in the application of Lean product development, which is a little different than Lean manufacturing. So I'll touch on that. I'll share some results from some projects that we've done using these principles, and then I'll share a journey that my organization, HGA, is on. We're about 800 people in the United States and 8 offices across the country, so we're a good-sized firm. And we've had some successes and some failures with Lean, and I'm here to share both with you. So let's see, I'm going to be looking at this. Okay, good. So the chart on the left shows, it's from The Economist in August of this year, and it is productivity over time for multiple industries in the United States. And you can see generally the curves are trending upwards. Agriculture, the scale on the bottom is time from 1947 to now. So agriculture has had phenomenal successes. Manufacturing has as well, if you compared it to 1947. Design and construction, so our field, has not. In fact, if you look at the bottom, the red curve, we peaked in about the mid to late 60s, and we've been in slow decline since then. In 1968, we were more than twice as efficient at building as we are right now at design and construction. This is a brutal slide for somebody like me, somebody like us, to see. Things were working better back then than they are now. Projects, we struggle to add, this is helpful, yeah. We struggle to get projects to meet schedule. In design and construction, in manufacturing, the success is much, much higher. Schedule is an issue. Budget is an issue. This is data from CMAA. 73% of projects were over budget. 70% were delivered late. The line at the bottom, we have a very dangerous occupation. 2.5 times as likely to die on a construction project than in other industries. We use a lot of resources. We're not a particularly sustainable industry. You can see the stats on energy consumption, energy use, water use, raw material use. This is a big, important industry in the world, and we can do better. There are opportunities in front of us, and I would say the biggest opportunity, the easiest, simplest opportunity, is to understand what's working well in other industries and try to apply that to our industry. And that is the sort of foundation of integrated project delivery. So at this point, usually we'll pass out Post-its and ask for 3 things that people want out of the presentation today, and I'll write them down. So I'm not in a particularly good place to write things down, although I think I could work that out. But how about this? 3 hands. Could I get 3 ideas? If you had goals for what you wanted to get out of me today, what would they be? I experienced a little of this last night. It's funny, where I am, there's a lot of pushback interaction. And I'd be happy to share. What I could do is share the ones from last night. But let's see. Are there any wishes that anybody's got in the crowd for what you'd want out of this session today? The ones from last night were to understand how this works on real projects. It was to understand, which is good because I've got some information in here, to understand a little bit of the culture. How do you get people on board with Lean, which is very difficult. And that, I would say, is the problem statement that I will bring to you. And then some thinking about the future and where the future is going for Lean. So I think I'm going to use those 3 wishes. Okay, so a little bit on Toyota and Lean. So Lean, Toyota is a very successful automobile company. They've been pretty much the #1 company since 2007. They've had an enormous growth very quickly. They were able to do things that other manufacturers are not able to do. They were able to produce the Prius, which gets a sort of mileage that people didn't believe was possible. They were able to create the Lexus model, which is a car that's both very quiet and has very good gas mileage, something that people didn't believe was possible until Toyota did it. The industries in the West watched Toyota's progress and their brilliance at both design and manufacturing, and couldn't understand how they could break rules, why they could do things that they weren't able to. So from the West, people went to Toyota to study the principles that they use to manufacture things. And they came back, they discovered some things that were very different. I think some of them might be represented on the slide. Oh, sure, just in time, the idea that instead of having inventory being a good thing, for Toyota, inventory is a bad thing. stopping the line, that a worker could stop the work in process instead of the foreman, the leaders controlling the pace of the work. Toyota uses the workers, the people who are working the wrenches, to control the pace of the work. Toyota does a lot of things backwards from the way the West used to. People from the West went to Toyota, studied those principles, came back and called them lean, right? Lean is not a Toyota word. It's the word that the people, Jeffrey Liker and his ilk, who went to Toyota, they came back and assembled these principles under the concept of lean. But again, it's not a Toyota thing. Nonetheless, it is the way Toyota works, the Toyota production system. They've done some really remarkable things. And just again, a quick show of hands, my sense is people in the room have studied these manufacturing principles fairly well. Is that pretty true? Familiarity with lean, just in time, those sorts of things? I'm seeing some nods but some puzzled looks, so we'll see how this goes. The idea that, and one thing, the emphasis on the studying of lean and Toyota was on the manufacturing side. So it was how Toyota was able to produce, to manufacture things at such a good quality level. In my world, lean came in to me through the Lean Construction Institute. I think you saw that TVD book that N was just showing as a product of that institute. So the goal, these two guys, Glenn Ballard and Greg Howland, I think Glenn has presented at this conference, they looked very simply at what if we took those Toyota manufacturing principles and applied them to design and construction. So what is lean? Is it something from Toyota? Is it going to Gemba? Is it value stream mapping? Is it voice of the customer? It's all of these things, the elimination of waste, very specific manufacturing-oriented principles. There's another man in the United States, Will Lichtig, who's been very influential in the construction industry. And Will had a very interesting idea that in addition to the manufacturing-based principles, there are some behavioral principles. There's some cultural underpinnings of lean. And in our early work with Will's former organization, Sutter Health, our contracts had these ideas buried in them, right? And some of them, let's see what it says, tightly couple learning with action, are very behavioral. To learn something is to do something. Optimize the whole, not the part, is something that is a balance of behavioral and manufacturing. Some other things, like increased relatedness of participants, are purely behavioral. The project will succeed better if the people get to know each other as people, not as organizations. So Will, he's a brilliant man, planted some behavioral seeds of lean behaviors in the work that he did. And then I really like this quote from Taiichi Ohno. So he is said to be the father of lean. He developed this system at Toyota a long time ago. And I'll read it in English. You should submit wisdom to the company. If you don't have any wisdom to submit sweat. If nothing else, work hard and don't sleep. So for sure in Japan, I think in the United States too, there's this very hard work ethic. I was part of a tour at a Toyota plant in the United States about a month ago. And this is a mostly American company, or mostly American group of people that are working according to Japanese principles. And it is surprisingly laid back and easygoing. They use Muri, Muda, they go to Gemba, they do value stream mapping, they use all these tools, but they're very easygoing and laid back about it. While I was there were some top executives from Toyota in Japan visiting the plant. So at any other plant, it would have been a very tense, frantic moment, and these people weren't that. They said to me, one of their lead engineers said to me, in our company, it's good to be a little bit lazy, because when you're lazy, you look for a better way of doing things. It isn't just about working harder. So I think that's a very important aspect of lean too, is to think about better ways of doing things. In my world, in our organization, we have come to define lean as a philosophy and a system, a production and design system, which I'll talk about, supported by some simple tools. So our journey began with learning tools and spending a lot of time on tools. And I will share some of the tools with you today. But I think a miss that we have made as an organization is we have focused on the tools. And in the early days, we were not mindful of the philosophy. So my goal today is to share both of those things. So a bit on philosophy, and the Toyota website, if you dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, the two underpinnings for their company are respect for people and continuous improvement. Now this is amazing. You know, if you look at General Motors, their mission statement is to increase shareholder value, deliver higher quality vehicles, all that sort of stuff. Toyota's not about that. You know, they talk about themselves as being in the business of developing people. So what do these two things mean? Continuous improvement is a phenomenal concept, right? That we are never perfect as human beings. There's always a better way than the way we are today. This is very different than legacy, right? In my industry, in architecture and construction in the United States, there's a very strong mentality of we've found a good way of doing this, and now we're just going to keep doing this the same way. The way we organize projects, schematic design, design development, construction documents, that was basically developed in the 50s, and we still use that system today. Continuous improvement is very different than that. It is about always seeking a better path. The second concept, respect for people, too, for me, is a little bit mind-blowing. The idea that the people who are doing the work know the best way to do the work. That's very different than manufacturing, than my world has been set up. In my world, traditionally, the people kind of at the top of the pyramid know the best way of doing things and tell the people at the bottom of the pyramid, here's what you're going to do. This concept, respect for people, is the opposite of that. It's amazing. I've got to watch the time, and I will. I'll share a story I shared at dinner the other night. A lean master was giving a group, actually another lean master, someone from Japan was talking with someone from England, someone from the United States. And he said, okay, I'm now going to share with you the most important lean tool there is. Are you ready? I'm going to share it with you. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out a piece of chalk. And he said, here's how you use the tool. You go to where the work is happening, you draw a circle on the floor, and you stand in it for 3 hours, and you watch the work. That's how you understand how the work is done. It's amazing. So these are very different concepts. Oh, I see. Okay. You're advancing those, and I'm advancing these. Okay, I'm getting it. So people say that in the history of the world, there have been 3 different production systems. A little bit of theory, and I'm already realizing I'm going to have to watch the time. A little bit of theory. The first production system there was craft production, where you had a craftsman who did everything, right? In a carriage maker, the craftsman would make the body, would be a woodworker and be able to make the body of the carriage. They'd be a metal worker. They'd be able to make the axles and the underlaying of the carriage. They'd be a leather maker, an upholsterer who would create the upholstery of the seats. They would do everything. The quality in craft construction is very high. The cost is very high. Craft production continues today. Musical instruments, some say Teslas, things are still made in the craft production system. They're very expensive. Henry Ford came along and created the mass production system that cut a product apart and outsourced the components to different businesses, right? So the alternators were made by a different company than the tires, which were made by a different company than the windshield. And in the mass production system, the cost went down quite a bit. The problem with mass production is the quality has gone down too, because the interfaces between the parts, you're going to hear a little bit about that from Thomas, who's probably here someplace. The interfaces between the parts are not always well negotiated. So the cost goes down, but the quality goes down too. Toyota's system, or the system that's attributed to Toyota, is lean. And in that case, the suppliers, the different component people, are all working together, sometimes according to the same business structure. In integrated project delivery, if design goes very well but construction fails, I lose my profit and vice versa. I am incentivized to have the construction go well. The construction is incentivized to have my world go well. So business-wise, the entities are very linked, either through shared profit or through the promise of repeat work. So in the lean system, the quality has come up quite a bit. Look at the Lexus, but the cost has stayed quite low. So it's a remarkable system. So today, I'm a designer, I'm an architect. Today I'm going to focus on lean product development, not lean manufacturing. So what we've been talking about so far has been aimed at the manufacturing world. This project on the right is an office building in California. This was an early, maybe one of the first lean projects in the United States. We took lean manufacturing principles and applied them directly to the project and had a lot of trouble. As an example, if you develop 4 different alternates in the beginning of a project and only one of them goes forward, under the manufacturing methodology, the other 3 are waste. And if we had not done those, we would have been more efficient. So we looked at those kinds of techniques and tried to bring them to design, and it failed. So what we did is we went back to Toyota, we went back to Gemba, we went back to Toyota and studied not the way they manufacture things, but the way they design things. And we learned that Toyota really has these 2 different pillars. There's the production management side and the design side. And the philosophical underpinnings are the same, but the tools are a little different. In manufacturing, you have a recipe and you have a predicted outcome. You know what the end is going to look like, so you're able to pull value from that end and understand just what's needed to create that and not everything else, because it's predictable. In design, the world is very different. In design, you're looking to maximize innovation and creativity in a limited amount of time. There is no predicted outcome. Design sometimes will start with a completely blank sheet. So the world is about maximizing quality in a minimum amount of time versus minimizing waste in the same period of time. So they're a little bit different. What we learned when we went to study Toyota and how they develop products is there are 4 pillars, 4 important key aspects. And this work, I would skip ahead, but I'm not going to. This work comes from a great book, some great research by Michael Kennedy. You'll see a flash of him later. And Kennedy's conclusion is there are these 4 pillars that you need. As an entrepreneurial leader, so somebody who's very nimble and able to work the team in a very inspiring way. An expert engineering workforce, workers who really know what they're doing. And then 2 other things that are a little different. Responsibility-based planning and control. So that's, I'll just say it again, responsibility-based. So I am responsible for my work, planning and control. It's a little bit different than sort of an accountability thing where the leader tells the people what to do. This is a personal thing. You'll see some examples. So that's a little different. And then the set-based design idea, which is really different. So set-based concurrent engineering. The idea that you will study multiple things at the same time, and you'll see, not just of the whole project, but at a component level. So the 2 big things of set-based design is that you're working simultaneously at multiple things, and you're working on components. I'll get into that in a little bit. So, anybody seen this graph before? Has anybody seen this? Okay. So this is my world, and I think a lot of us in design and construction. Let's see. I bet there's a. Oh yeah, look at that. So the yellow curve here represent the axis. The x-axis on the bottom is time. So these are our phases: SD, DD, construction documents, and then the y-axis is the amount of knowledge, the amount of effort, the amount of energy in a project. And in my world, the amount of energy at the beginning of a project is very low, the team is very small, and over time it grows and grows and grows and then peaks as construction's getting started and then sort of falls off. And the most of the energy is happening at this point in the project. Now, the problem with that curve is this green line. So this green line represents the ability of the project to tolerate change. So as in the beginning, the project, anything can happen, and making a change, moving a wall, moving a building is very easy. As you get deep into the project, you just can't do that. So this shows kind of the problem with the system. All of that strength, all of that knowledge is happening at a time where the project can't handle it. So IPD, Integrated Project Delivery, fundamentally is about shifting that energy, bringing that team and that knowledge forward to where this blue line is, getting the knowledge in the room and on the project at a time when the project can handle that knowledge, when you can take best advantage of it. So everything today that I talk about can be rolled up into this one punchline. So those 2 pillars that I talked about, the responsibility-based planning and control and set-based design, I'm going to talk about those a little bit. So responsibility-based planning and design is pull planning. Any familiarity with this? Anybody fill out stickies and stuff, or has anybody seen pictures like this before? Ah, good. So I can make things up. So the idea behind this, pull planning, as I said, is a little bit backwards. Instead of maybe a lead engineer or a project leader sitting in a room and figuring out with Microsoft Project a very long schedule of who's going to do what, when, maybe for the next 3 years, pull planning starts with the end and works backwards through a series of milestones. So pull planning is getting a lot of the project team together, representatives from different disciplines, and understanding the big chunks of work that need to happen, the milestones back from the very end of the project. In my world, I do a lot of healthcare work. In my world, the end is typically the first patient in a bed. And before that is licensing and staffing and stocking. Before that is the certificate of occupancy. Before that is the move-in of furniture. Before that, and we keep working our way back in these big milestones, up until a milestone that's about 2 to 4 weeks out. And at that milestone, we then get very, very detailed. And you can see some of this detail here. We get very detailed with tags that are color-coded according to the team that's doing the work, with very specific tasks that the team are doing. And this is an excerpt from a pull plan in Las Vegas. These are days of the week. So Katie, on this day, is going to give to the team this task. It looks like a proposed list of commodity trades for the team to review. I like these quotes are mostly from Greg Howell. All plans are forecasts. All forecasts are wrong. The longer the forecast, the more wrong it is. The more detailed the forecast, the more wrong it is. This is about getting the people who are doing the work to understand the work that they have right in front of them and make personal commitments to doing the work. Here's something that's a little complicated that I could come back to, but when we get ready for these meetings, we ask each team to think about the work that they need. This is a homework sheet for pull planning. To think about the work, the sequence of the work that I'm going to do. So if my task is to deliver, say, an elevation, then this would show all of the tasks that I need to do to be able to do this. I should use this. So this is architecture. This is our group, and the completion is 100% submittal. These are the different tasks that go into that, so it's working backwards from the end. And in order to do the 95% page turn, we're going to need probably from the team to have all of the PDFs posted to Box, which is the system we use to share folders. So this is a sheet that we do pre-work for, so we think through our tasks, we think through the tasks we need of others, and then we take a guess at when these different tasks need to occur. And then we come together as a team. Let's see if this advancer works. There we go. We come together as a team and we map those tasks out together onto a common board. It's very simple. We do this with software sometimes, but I got to tell you, the most effective way is to start with Post-its. So everybody in their own handwriting is filling out what their tasks are. So the lower right shows what one of these tags are. So the supplier is me. The customer is the person I'm going to deliver my work to. What I will provide is the work I'm going to do, the task, and what I need is what I need from other people. So in order for me to draw my elevation, I would need from Ergo the structural system so I understand where the windows can go and where they can't go. And then duration is date is how long it will take me to do the work and what day I'm going to have that work done in order to sequence with those overall milestones. And you can see these boards from this job in Las Vegas are organized by day, right? So this is January 20th, the 21st. What work is happening on that day? And when we get together as a team, we status the board. We talk through how's it going. Did you get your tasks? Did you accomplish your tasks? And when you do, you cross them out. Or did you not? And if you didn't, we ask what happened. These variance codes are that standard system for being able to explain I wasn't able to get my task done because I was overcommitted, or I didn't understand it, or the work that I needed to get done was not done, those sorts of things. And we track our planned percent complete. We track how well we're doing over time. And the goal of the team is not to have 100%, because you want to keep stretching and striving. Our goal typically is about 80, 85%. You want to not have things so easy that you're always going to hit 100, nor do you want to be stretching so much that you're really breaking things. This is a neat example. It's from Christmas of last year, and you could see the week of Christmas, our productivity dropped way off, and then it sprung right back up because we all felt so guilty for for blowing things off during the holidays. So the key aspects of this are I'm making personal commitments to the work that the team needs. The team is defining with the milestones the overall work that needs to happen. So my specific tasks are feeding into the milestones that are shared by the group. And we're tracking our performance, not in a judgmental way, but in a learning way. And the idea is when I fail at something, why did it happen? And what can we learn from it? I think there might be one more pull planning slide in here. Let's see. Oh, it might be. Oh, there we go. What is that? Okay, no, that's the last one. Okay, so that's pull planning. That was one of those pillars. The other pillar is set-based design. And as I said, this is a little bit backwards from what's intuitive. What's on the left, the left part of this slide shows the way we typically work, right? As an architect, we'll come in with, as a designer, we'll come in with multiple designs. We'll try to pick one very early and stick with that no matter what. So as we learn more about the cost implications or the schedule implications or even the quality implications of that design, we try to ignore that and just keep that going. And what happens, of course, is we get stuck in these iterations where we'll learn that it doesn't fit the budget and it'll send us all the way back to concept. Or even further along, we'll learn we missed one of the rooms when we were laying out the floor plan and it'll send us all the way back to creating new rooms. It causes enormous trouble, but this is the way 90% of the work in the United States is done. The Toyota method, the set-based design method, is the opposite of that. You carry options forward as far as you can into the project. Remember that pull plan with the milestones? It tells you the last responsible moment to make a specific decision. So instead of making the decision as early as you can, you make the decision as late as you can. So that's very different than the way we're wired. Another thing that's very different is you work in components. Instead of having concepts for the entire project, you have a concept for the nursing unit, you have a concept for the operating suite, you have a concept for the enclosure, a series of concepts for the enclosures. And you work within that subsystem as opposed to in the aggregate, the whole thing. And you collapse those sets as late as you can. You keep them open as long as you can, and you only collapse those sets with the overall group. So if I'm on the enclosure side looking at different skin systems, I will research different systems, I will carry them deep into the project, and I will only make a recommendation to the team when I need to, and I'll do that with the entire team for everybody to review. It's a very different deal. Some kind of theories that back this up. There are two interesting things. One is the bicycle concept. The research that we studied during that project to understand product development is done by Michael Kennedy, this guy on the right. And this is from a great book that he wrote. But basically it's showing if you study 3 bicycle options, you won't get as much innovation as if you study 3 handlebar options, 3 wheel options, 3 drivetrain options. Your ability to innovate is much higher when you work at the component level instead of the overall level. Now, having used this system, something that's very brilliant about it is you can have a very reliable set of handlebars that are very vanilla and plain, but you know they'll work. And because you have that, you're able to stretch and try some very crazy, innovative things, knowing that if something fails, you have a reliable one to go back. So you can test and be creative and innovative in each of these things at a component level without risking failure for the whole project. A different way of saying the same thing, I don't know if anybody has seen the parable of the 2 watchmakers. 2 watchmakers that are creating very beautiful, brilliant timepieces of 1,000 pieces, and they're very popular, so they get a lot of phone calls. One watchmaker works piece by piece to assemble a watch. When he gets a phone call, he loses everything he's working on. The other watchmaker works in components. So he'll take parts, 10 parts, put them together into a sub-assembly, take 10 of those together and put them into another sub-assembly. So he never loses more than 10 parts. The first watchmaker goes bankrupt and ends up working for the second watchmaker. Working at a component level is a much safer way, that is also more innovative and creative. And that's a fundamental precept of set-based design. This is some work from a project. So what this is showing, it's a very simple tool, but it captures a lot of information. So what this is showing is the y-axis across here. These are the goals of the projects. We spend a lot of time in alignment with the entire team, understanding what the overall project goals are. These are our nursing unit, our clinic layouts for an audiology project, and it's showing 3 different layouts and how they perform relative to these criteria that are established. And you can see idea 3 is performing much better than idea 1. So at any point in time, you can understand the performance you can see what the alternates are, and you can understand how they're performing relative to the criteria of the project. Okay, so this is the end of the theory section. And Toyota calls it knowledge-based design, as do we. Those 4 pillars were the leader, right? An expert workforce, the set-based design, which I just talked through, responsibility-based planning and control. So the blue circles around the outside are lean tools that we've either developed or brought from Toyota that support those 4 different things. So this is the work that we did in learning about product development. We then took that work. Oh, and I should say, in our world, in my organization, we design things, we deliver things, we implement them. We're also very focused on bringing lean principles to our clients in their work. So in healthcare, we work with our clients to understand more effective ways of delivering healthcare, to bring lean operations to the healthcare environment. Same thing in education. So we took those tools and we began implementing them on projects and had some very, very, very good results. This image is from one of those diamonds from an integration event where people were reporting out ideas and their performance against the metrics, similar to that set log that we just talked about. That project that I mentioned at first, the office building, we were able to, in a time of great escalation in California, we were able to drive the cost of this project from $22.25 million down to just under $20 million while increasing scope. This is a phenomenal. Sutter had 32 projects going at this time. Only 2 of them were on budget. This was as I said, a time of great escalation. This was the only project to be below budget. Another project for them, they asked us to take these lean principles and develop a hospital doing these 5 things to increase the throughput, to move more patients through the hospital by 50%, move more patients through the same system by a factor of 50%, to reduce the staff in the hospital by 40%. So 50% more patients with 40% less staff, do it in 30% less square feet, less area, than their best performing hospital, Sutter Davis. Build it, design, permit, and build it in half the time, and then cut natural resource use by 25%. We beat all of these metrics pretty significantly by taking these lean principles I just went through and working the construction side and working the delivery of healthcare side. Of that first slide that I showed of the integration event was a very large project in California. It was supposed to be, its budget was $6 billion. When we got into the job, it was running at $7.5 billion. So using those same tools, dividing the big project into components, staffing the components with cross-discipline teams. This is an image of the component of the people who are working on the job. So we divided the project into these 7 components, and we had designers, we had construction people, we had administration people, we had operators, so the people who were actually going to be using the product, using the facility, were on the design team, all working together according to those common metrics. And we were able to move the cost from $7.5 billion down to $5.7 billion in a period of about 3.5 months. And this was a remarkable accomplishment, but again, using the tools that I just went through before. I think there's one or two other project examples in here. Oh yeah, this is a job in Las Vegas, a hospital there. When we got onto the project, the project was, the CEO, he's shown here holding this beam. The CEO gave us a challenge to deliver the project 2.5 months ahead of the schedule that we had agreed to. We ended up delivering it 3 months, 3.5 months ahead of the schedule. Same thing on budget. I think I've got a slide here for this. So yeah, when we got onto the project, it was $3.8 million. This is about a $35 million project, $3.8 million over. We ended up delivering it for $2.8 million under. So the tools really work. We had some fantastic successes on the schedule and the budget side. On the design side, I think this project I'm particularly proud of. It's a physical sciences building for a community college, for a junior college. In the United States, in Los Angeles. And the budget for this project was very, very, very tight. It's a design-build job, so we worked on extremely limited amounts of money and time. And the design aspirations of the client were very, very high. So were the sustainability aspirations. This is a LEED Platinum building. This is a net zero building. And from the design standpoint, SCUP is a very prestigious organization. SCUP and the AIA, which is our architecture institute, every year they pick a very small group of higher ed projects for design awards, for honor awards. This year we got the 2016 SCUP Honor Design Award for this project. There were 3 of them. One for Harvard won one, Stanford won one, and this community college, this junior college in Los Angeles, won the 3rd one. This is a remarkable accomplishment given the budget that we had. And again, it was done using those tools that I just talked about. Oh my goodness, it must be, I'm imagining what it's like to be in your seats right now, looking at this stuff, saying, okay, here's some new stuff. Look how great it's working. Rainbows and puppy dogs, the world is wonderful. Okay, let's just do this. It's all easy. We'll go. It'll be fun. We had that same feeling. We thought these are some phenomenal successes. We've looked at other industries. We saw how design was doing. All we got to do is figure out what works in those industries, bring them into design. Everybody will be happy. So as an organization, we thought we are going to package this stuff and we're going to roll it out across our company, and this is going to be the way our company operates. So we created knowledge-based design within HGA. We created a binder, a big, thick manual for how you organize projects, how you run projects, how you train people in tools, how you document what you do, how you share knowledge. It was amazing. We did a very good job. We connected it to our strategic plan, so we built our company growth around it. We were very methodical, and we had great graphics. we did train the trainer. We taught people how to teach other people these techniques, and then we deployed them across the company. We're 8 offices, 800 people. Across the company, training everybody in our company how to use these tools. We set up share folders so that everybody could access this stuff off our network. Both in the training and then in the capturing of material. A3s are a brilliant tool. It was one of the blue dots. We set up an A3 sharing system so you could get very quickly access to the knowledge from other projects. Just an aside, is any A3s, how familiarity with A3s? Haha. Keep your ears and eyes open for there's a lot of good in that tool. But for another time. It was the best. We did it right. We rolled this thing out very, very well. And the truth is, it just did not work. It failed to roll out within our company. We had phenomenal success that we could prove on projects. We did a great job packaging it and sharing it with the whole company. We all work for the same organization. Sharing it with the whole company, and it didn't stick at all. The project teams that were using Lean continued to use Lean. The results that we were having that were good continued to be good. It did not grow. It was crazy to watch. And what had happened, this is the work that I am in the middle of right now, is trying to understand why it works sometimes and why it doesn't work other times. And what we think is our system, our structure within our company, it reflects the diagram on the left. That we're hierarchical, and we rolled Lean out from the top down in a very unlean manner. And really the way the Lean teams, have been, where did I go? Sorry about that. The other way. Oh, there you go. This is a good preview of what's coming. really the way the lean teams work is more like this, where you're connecting people across the company directly to each other versus working in sub-teams under a manager working for a leader. Now I will go ahead. Thank you for keeping up. We had responded thinking that our system was complicated, that there were many pieces that work in a very predictable way, when in fact our system wasn't complicated, it was complex. There are many pieces that work in a way that's nuanced, fuzzy, and unpredictable. We organized ourselves, we were organized for complicated. The reality is we're complex. So we are in the middle, and the way I believe we're working right now, this is kind of the structure we used to have. This is the structure we currently have, where some teams are working in a much more cross-functional, responsibility-based, respectful way of each other, and others are working in a more hierarchical way. We are working to shift our organization to the diagram on the right, where we have, and this is a term coined by this General McChrystal. He was the general that led the American invasion of Iraq, and he shifted the structure of his army from a hierarchical top-down driven structure into a series of teams that are interconnected with other teams to make a super team. So this is work that I'm very interested in, and we don't have this figured out yet. So the way we are currently organized, the way we are leaving, we're broken into different practice groups. We have a healthcare practice group, we have a higher education practice group, we have a corporate practice group, and each group has their own experts and leaders and workers, and we are working to move into a system that looks more like this, where we break down those divisions between our divisions, those walls between our divisions, and we find ways to link people directly to each other. It's when it works, it's very effective, but it's very fuzzy and difficult to. It's a different thing to track performance in this system, and that's what we're struggling with right now. The finding for me is, if we go back to that early work, when I was focusing us on the responsibility on pull planning and set-based design, it really reflected the path that our company or organization, our clients were on. We thought we knew what leadership was. We thought we had that. And we thought we knew enough about the workforce to be able to just go with that. And for sure, in some of our teams we did, but as an organization we didn't. We had missed the fundamental respect for people, and we were not approaching our structure with this idea of improving it. We were just using the structure that we had. A little bit on leadership. We've thought a lot about that. We've brought in lead trainers for our C-suite. I'm on the board of directors, so our entire board has been trained in lead now. And we are thinking about leadership in different ways. We for sure were organized more top-down, the kind of old way, where the leader is the one who distributes accountability. You are going to do this on this date. You are going to do this on this date. And we are moving. We had a mix of that, and then we had also a mix of those different divisions in my organization being able to work fairly independently of each other, where when one division was doing well and another division was doing poorly, there wasn't a lot of learning or sharing back and forth between them. It was really a reflection of this, hey, you guys, we're all just going to do our own thing, and if some are better than others, it's okay. And where we are really aggressively moving is a handoff leadership style where we figure things out together. It's less about me telling you what to do and more about us being on a journey together to learn this as we go and do something that hasn't been done. So it's not easy work. This is our CEO. This is a shot of a recent board meeting where we're working through the restructuring of our organization. You can see a diagram that looks similar to what I just showed. This is energy and infrastructure, healthcare, public, corporate, and the different important bits, the marketing, the business development, the research, within each one of these being replicated over and over, and working towards a system where we share those resources as opposed to having them deployed within each of the different divisions. So it's work that's going on right now. And I think, am I near? How much more time do I have? Oh, really? Okay, good. Well, I'm gonna pause here. Are there any questions? My sense from last night. Okay, go. Perfect. Thank you. Ah, sure. So the question is, my company is 800 people, so it's got many specialists there, the engineers, the designers, sustainability people. Oh, go ahead.
But our project consists of different companies who work with the same project, and it's almost impossible to get together every morning or even every week. So how this model works for us? How do you think?
Yeah, and then just restating, it's very difficult to get together when you're in so many different companies. How can the model work? I think that we've all embraced this continuous improvement thing a lot, and the idea behind that is to try things and give yourself permission to fail. So in my world, sometimes I work with engineers from my company. Honestly, that's only about 10 to 15% of the time. Most of the time, I'm working with project teams that are based out of companies that are separate from my own. And to be fair, most of the time, they're companies that I've worked with before. So we develop relationships with the companies, and some of the people in those other companies I know better than the people that are part of my company but working in another office. So my world, although I'm part of a big organization, is a little bit like that too. We work with players from other companies. So if the question is how do you get together and how do you really work, our first idea was to use something from Toyota, the big room, where everybody does all of the work. Our interpretation of the big room was everybody does all of the work together in the same room. So that $6 billion job that I shared, we had 100 people from probably, maybe 14 different organizations in a room together Monday noon till Friday noon. So we were meeting, brainstorming, and working all together all of the time. And it was a phenomenal expense. This was a project that was based, many of us had to fly and stay in hotels in order to be able to do that. So we effectively formed a new company to do that work, and we committed to being physically present doing that. That was our first pass at the big room. The big room has since evolved to spending a lot of time together early in a project. So the word is co-locate. We'll co-locate for a period of time to get to know each other. So we spend a lot of time just developing relationships and working together. And then we split and work independently and connect electronically with each other. So right now, where we are, if it's not hard, could you go back to this slide? Let's see. If you go back to probably like slide 30. Let's see. Virgo, thank you. Maybe slide 25. I don't know the numbers. Oh, a couple more. This one. Yeah. That one's, what is it? 24. Yeah. See if it, okay. So this slide that I showed before from pool planning is an example of an electronic integration. So we've shifted from, I think it was the 2 after this. There we go, this one. Is there one after this? Oh, maybe not. Well, that's okay. This is, I thought I had another one that showed the team. This is, for this project, we if you think of work happening and then integrating happening and then work happening and then integrating happening, our first pass at the big room, we did the work and the integrating all together. And then subsequently, we are just getting together for integration events. So the work is happening independently, and then we come together for integration. The integration events there's almost always a pull plan session. I have another version of this that's a Bluebeam session. It's a web meeting, so we're using GoTo to connect to a Bluebeam session, and we're marking up the sticky notes collaboratively as a team. There are something like 14 people on the call, and everybody's just going through the work that's being done and talking with each other. So we've evolved from being physically connected to each other in a room to only doing that maybe every week or 2 weeks. Ergo, when you and I first met, I was traveling to San Francisco once a week for 2 days to do that early time where we're all together with people from different companies. I'm now doing it just once a week for a day. This project, which was in Las Vegas, it was every 2 weeks we would meet for 2 days, and then in between then we would meet electronically. So the simple answer to the question is we've leveraged electronics quite a bit in order to replace the need to work together. A really important learning for us is that if you spend the time to get to know each other personally, face-to-face, you can communicate very well electronically with WebEx and GoTo and Zoom. If you don't get to know each other in the beginning, that really doesn't work so well, because you don't have the same relationship with somebody. There's something about us humans that need that kind of eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact. So that's how it physically works, and then contractually, a lot of, probably 3/4 of the projects I'm involved in right now, we sign one contract. The architect, the engineer, and the contractor, and the owner all sign one contract with one shared profit pool. So we literally form a single company. If I succeed and the engineer fails, I fail. So we have worked to physically get ourselves together and then contractually tie each other together. Does that answer the question a little bit? Any more questions? I really like questions too, so feel free. I have a lot to learn in this area, so you're helping me with that.
Maybe I can ask one.
Oh, sure, here we go.
So, as you probably can understand, so the Estonian market is relatively small, so most of the projects are very small. So what is your suggestion or recommendation in terms of for the companies doing those relatively small projects? From where to start?
Well, it's the medical office building that I showed, that was probably like an $18 million project. Is that about the size of the scale of the project here? So a massive learning there was to bring construction knowledge to design. And much of our work is done, the design is done ahead of the contractor being on board, ahead of construction being on board. And that's a very difficult situation because of those curves that I showed early on. So for that project, which is maybe similar scale, just having a single contract between the contractor and the architect and the owner, giving us all the same incentives and getting us in the room together was enormously helpful. So I was the designer on that project, and I would get feedback about glass sizes that, if you would just trim your glass by 4 inches, we could save, $50,000 in the enclosure. What do you think? And I'm like, I don't care. I'm happy to do that. But if I had drawn it all the way through CDs and we'd gotten a permit on it, it would have been impossible. So just bringing construction into design is something you could probably start tomorrow.
So what kind of commercial agreements did you have? The IPD, the commercial agreement?
For that project, we had an IPD agreement. For the Harbor College project, the project with a great design outcome, we did not. So we never used the word lean, and we didn't talk too much about the tools. We used them all, but we deeply engaged with our construction partner and brought them along the entire way. Here's a way of laying out a classroom. Here's a skin system. And we asked the questions and we used the tools and behaviors without a lot of fanfare, and we got amazing results. So the contract helps for sure, because then you're all physically tied to each other. But even in the absence of the contract, the tools and more importantly the behaviors are very powerful.
Nii, kas on veel küsimusi?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's a follow-up question about the builder. How did you motivate him to give the insights before he starts the construction? Because he's now quite, if you look at it from the general aspect, he's not quite interested in giving some insights before he starts building.
Yeah, it's my answer has sort of 2 levels to it. So these days, there's an increased ability to bring the contractor on board before the design is fully executed. So in that case, it's very simple, right? They're on board, they're going to get the project, so the more insight they give that drives costs down, the more money they'll make. So they're incentivized to do that. Now, having said that, the subcontractors, the trade partners, are almost never in that situation. And it's a very potentially difficult and awkward situation where you're working with people to get insight without them necessarily having a part of the project. So I'll give an example. For the Sutter project, Ergo, that you and I met on, we were driven to do a lot of innovative things around prefabrication and modularity. And we got together the best in the industry, so 3 plumbing contractors, 3 electrical contractors, to brainstorm better ways of systematizing the attic space of clinics. And that was a difficult deal. The only reason that worked is because our client, Sutter, was big enough that everybody in the room had a sort of promise, working understanding, that they would get projects down the road. I mean, that's the method that Toyota uses to incentivize their supply chain. We were talking about this last night over dinner, that not necessarily that their profit is tied directly to results, but that if they do a good job, they will get more work. So if you have that kind of relationship, then you can make it work. For the case that I just listed at Sutter, it did. You know, in developing, we did composite mechanical racks. So we did these 6-foot by 20-foot by 30-inch racks that had supply and return ducts and hot water, cold water, electrical technology, all that stuff. They'd come in big sections. And in order to design those, we needed the input of the people who are actually going to do the work. You know, can you get your hand up into the basket to lay the cable? And Sutter has at least 2 things going for it. The first one that I mentioned, they're big enough that everybody will get work at some point. And then the second thing is that they really respect people. You know, and we talked about the difficulty of getting everybody together. We talked about the awkwardness, and just recognize the problem. And I think that our partners who were not under contract at the time really appreciated that. But it's a challenge, for sure. Easiest is when you're working in a contract where you can bring everybody on early, and then it's not an issue. Are there those sorts of contracts in Estonia? Have there been IPD, risk reward, they call them IFOA, integrated form of agreement type contracts, or not so much?
Not really. I would say most of them are design beat build or the design build.
Okay. Even design build has shadows of that, because then at least you're one. And then P3, public-private partnerships, do they happen in Estonia at all?
Yes, for sure, but what's the percentage? I don't know the numbers now.
Okay.
But Stan, actually, at the beginning of the day, Ian was explaining that we just translated one copy of that. So basically, it's about target value design.
Yeah.
And as I know, you have a lot of experience with the target value design. So I was wondering, maybe you would be keen or kind enough to share your experiences and walk us through the target value design process. And maybe showing also the graph. You know, at the beginning you had a very high cost, and then you started to drive it down until you actually decided, okay, this is how we're going to go.
Yeah, I was happy to see that book held up. There are probably a couple different tools or a couple different exhibits. One would be, if you can remember, the component team, where we took that $6 billion projects and divided it into 7 different components. So each of those teams had a budget associated with them. And then within each of those components, there were subcomponents that had budgets associated with them. So target value design is a little bit related to set-based design. And in target value design, you create a structure. Well, let's see, where was it? It was, maybe 1 or 2 after this, I think. Well, actually, this would be good. Let me see if I can I do this? There we go. Maybe click this slide first. There you go, and then we'll go back to. So in target value design, you create a team structure that aligns with a budget structure. So you divide the team into cross-discipline groups, and you give them each a series of targets. Commonly, money is for sure one of them, one of the targets, the capital cost. There's an interesting this is an interesting case study. Let's see. This one here, I'm sorry to be hopping around so much. If we go back one more. So this is that team working on that $6 million project. And what we did is we created targets for first cost, for capital cost, for operational cost, for energy use, for square footage, and for time. So we had 5 targets set for the project. And I know you can't see any of this. And the component groups, this is, I wish that I had left this in color. These are colored. These are ideas and concepts within each of the component teams and the effect on the overall targets. So each team had a specific they had specific targets under money and schedule and energy use. And then we worked through a cycle where we worked through a series of ideas and then a series of designs, understanding their impacts on the targets as we went. So it sounds pretty complicated, but it was pretty well orchestrated. This is a much smaller project that used that same technique. And you can see over time the cost dropping. Just getting that team of constructors and designers and operators together to say, hey, you've got I don't know, $750,000 to accomplish this. Show me some ways of accomplishing it. Show me a handlebar that you know will work, and then 2 other ideas for handlebars, and then make a recommendation of which one to proceed with when you need to according to the pull plan. Oh, say it again? For different professions. It depends on the size of the project. For this project, we would have we had one MEP engineer, one structural engineer, we had a medical planner and a designer, we had a project manager, and maybe 3 people on the trade side, one for mechanical plumbing, one for electrical, and one for construction, so maybe 8, something like that. Pretty for this size project, pretty reasonably good size. More typically, the designer and the planner, we had those 8 people engaged at the very beginning. More typically, you remember that curve? There'd be just a designer and a planner working until here, and then the people would begin coming on. So, any other questions? All right. So, what have we learned? We learned a little bit about lean and some theory, especially as it pertains to design, to product development. We've seen a little bit of success of how things have worked out well. We saw a well-intentioned company fail at trying to roll that out everywhere within its organization. And then we've got some thoughts about why that might happen. So the last segment that I have, and again, we're skipping around, so thank you for keeping up with this. And Ergo, I really appreciate you translating the slides so late in the day. So leadership styles, we talked about that. We talked about the work. So here we go. The model evolves. So we have been, in parallel to this, thinking about what design means. And what a process for design might be for a company that is motivated by design. And we've been thinking about design as sort of an exercise from working to very abstract to very specific. And we are experimenting with different ways of imagining what that is. But at the simplest level, if you think of an abstraction as sort of a piece of food, and then as you get more specific, a piece of fruit, an apple, a Granny Smith apple, you're working your way down the specificity scale from abstract to specific. And we are right now thinking about the most abstract bits of a project as being experiential, so what the experiential needs of a human are in that space, and operational, what the needs of the operations of the project are. So in the case of an operating room, it'd be what the lighting needs are, what the temperature needs are, what the spatial needs are, and we're working to understand experiential and operational needs at a very high level, and then once we understand those needs, bring them down into specific answers that respond to those needs. It's a strange conversation. We've been very influenced by design thinking. And IDEO is an organization in the United States that has done a lot of good and interesting work in this. Any experience with IDEO? Has anybody seen any of this stuff? So they're related to Lean. You know, they in parallel to Toyota have developed some very similar concepts in the way they approach design. So we have gone to a system that sort of combines a little bit of Toyota and a little bit of IDEO, where we think of our design work as a problem definition phase, right? Understanding the why, what's really driving the inspiration phase of a project, what the real needs are, and then an idea phase. If the need is a certain air changes per hour, what are ideas that will achieve that? And then an implementing side. You know, if the idea is a linear diffuser or diffusers that are placed high and low, so you get laminar airflow. Maybe the biggest idea is a sterile supply of air. One idea is laminar flow, and then the implementation comes up with a design that supports that laminar flow idea. Does that make sense? So it's sort of moving from food to fruit to apple to Granny Smith, as opposed to the way most architects in my world work. We jump right in at Granny Smith without really understanding the operational and experiential needs of a project. So this is our current design process. We have again borrowed from Toyota and IDEO, and we're working to kind of not standardize in a bureaucratic way, but support a series of methods to achieve the inspiration phase, where we do a lot of research and try to understand the current state of a client, what's working and what isn't, or as Toyota would say, the Gemba walk, that chalk line, in the early part of a project. And then we get into the idea phase, where we're working through it's not as abstract as the why, but we are not drawing yet. We're coming up with concepts that address the needs that we've identified in that inspiration phase. And then, by the way, we're doing it at a component level. We're not doing the whole project. We're doing enclosure studies and classroom studies and maker space studies and operating room studies. We're doing them independently, and then we're collapsing them together into an implementation phase, where we bring all that stuff together into a holistic project. And the whole time, we're working with that cross-discipline team. So we've got contractors and engineers working with us, and users working with us from the very beginning, creating the inspiration, understanding the experiential needs and operational needs of the project. So this really is kind of the work that we're involved in right now. And I think one last touch. Yeah, this is the work that we're involved in now. Maybe a last touch on this is we're also spending a lot of time on our teams and on personal development. So this is a name tag. This is my buddy Creed, who is the designer on this job in Las Vegas. That's okay. You can see his name tag in the upper right. Strengths Finders is a system where you take a test online. It's very easy, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I think it reflects a certain reality, and it tells you what your personal traits are in terms of communication and motivation, and even the sort of culture that you align yourself with. So what you're seeing in this chart is very transparent. This is our project team. So this is a $35 million job. You can see these are all the people who are in the big room. So you can see it's an enormous amount of, it's a lot of people that, in the job. And you can see how where they score, what their motivators are. So achiever, analytical, I think I'm in here. I'm probably in here someplace. Oh yeah, here I am. So I am an achiever. I am motivated by connectedness. Ideation is a big driver for me. Positivity is, and then woo is it? Oh no, strategic. I am a strategic thinker. Our name tags that we wore in the room had our traits on them. So the idea is that we're all different, and somehow, if you look at our team, this was the job that accomplished some of those remarkable schedule things. We had a crazy amount of achievers and a crazy amount of responsibility people on the team, and then consistency was fairly high too. But this is an idea that we're really investing in the staff not just in our company, but in our project teams, and sharing with each other who we are. we're motivated by and what we're not so good at too. So this is sort of the closing slide. I really like Greg Howell and Glenn Ballard have both been very big forces in my life, and this quote by Greg that design is principally a social activity is very touching to me because I think it's true. And I think the better we all understand each other as humans, what motivates us, and the people who are going to use the work that comes out of what we do, the better we're going to be able to shift to bring our curve of design and construction up, drive more value into society and serve the world. So I really appreciate you staying with me through this, so thank you. And I should ask too, are there any more questions? I'm not sure where we are timing-wise, but...
So we have another 7 minutes for questions.
7 minutes, all right.
Yes. First, let's say thank you to Stan. Ja nüüd on aega veel mõneks küsimuseks, et kas kellelgi on soovi?
I have some questions, so if you don't ask me questions, I will ask you questions.
A typical Estonian crowd.
Well, I have I think a very easy question. This is my first trip to Estonia. Go ahead, you first. Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No.
But my question was basically, if you are a designing company, what is the value that is Lean giving to you? I clearly can see that it gives a lot of values to the end user, to the client. It gives a lot to the facility manager. But what are the benefits that the designers are getting out of it? Because if you do quite rough comparison with the traditional way, that means that the traditional way would save you, you would spend less time to do the design, even though the design could be not so efficient, compared to the Lean one, where you will spend more time analyzing, finding the best. But in overall, if you look only from the designing point of view, it doesn't. You don't get values out of it. If you look at it from the rough perspective.
Boy, it's a good question. So it's what is the value to a design company? The traditional method seems to be more efficient time-wise. It takes more time to develop all these scenarios than it does to just develop one and bring it through. The reality in my world, when we work in the traditional model, we work without a complete understanding. And almost always we make assumptions as designers that then get proven wrong at some point in the project. And we have to go back to what we did before, and we almost never get paid for that. So typically, if you look at a profit pattern in our projects are fairly profitable in the early days because we have an overall fee and we think we're doing well. And then once construction gets involved, we uncover a lot of problems that weren't solved during design, and profitability just falls. So overall, a lot of overall, we struggle with profitability in the typical project because we think we're doing well, because we don't have the knowledge to know that we're not. So the benefit to designers is getting that information up front at a time when you can respond with it in design. That Harbor College project, we're a design firm. Our old COO used to say, profit is like breathing. You don't live to breathe, but if you don't breathe, you can't live. So we're not motivated by profit, but we need to achieve a certain amount in order to keep the design going. The Harbor College project, the Scup Award project, is a great example of how design can really be improved through the use of these techniques. It was partly by focusing on components and partly by having construction there with us. So when we started the job, we thought, net zero, and everybody said there's no way this project could be net zero. It's a laboratory. So the air changes because of the hoods are so high. It's a community college project, which are typically fairly low quality projects. I mean, it was an impossibility. But by taking on that goal and having construction there, the contractor would say, well, if we could just do this, then maybe that would help. Well, if we could do this, that would help. We achieved that. So,
thank you.
What do you need to facilitate this conversation in the early stage with contractors? Do you need to have some rough ideas or already some kind of concrete ideas, or what's the level of granularity that you have to have in order to involve the contractors?
Yeah, the honest answer is I don't know. But what we are doing is that entrepreneurial leader that we skipped right across is assigning a leadership position whose job is not to tell everybody what to do, but to be sure that everybody is working according to a common understanding. First, by creating that understanding, and then testing the work against that understanding. So for this job, that leadership position, we define it very, very clearly, and then we trade off. So every week, somebody different is in that position. And when I'm in that position, it's my responsibility to make sure everybody is working together and that they're paying attention and testing their work against the criteria that have been given, including the targets that we've set for budgets within those component teams. And next week, it may be you. We had an interesting, when we bring team members onto that project, we onboard them. So we take them through a version of this that takes an entire day, and we train people in tools, and we do exercises, and it's very thorough and rich. We were conducting an onboarding the other day, and at one point, the facilitator that day stopped and said to someone who had never worked in Lean, okay, you're going to present the next section, and sat down. And then the person who had never seen the slides and never encountered Lean just stood up and had to work their way through the material and got an enormous amount of support from the group, and it worked out great. But the lesson is we're all in this together. This isn't one person saying, here's how you do it. It's today is my turn, tomorrow will be your turn. So we are still working through the leadership model. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, if I had a wish for the group, and really even my own industry, it would be when you see the slide that says continuous improvement or Kaizen, when you see Kaizen, continuous improvement, you think, yes, I can do that. That's great. I love that. For sure I'm going to do that. A different way of saying that is permission to fail. Right? And the idea, if you're going to improve, you're going to fail. It's like learning to ski. You don't get better if you don't fall sometimes. And I think one of the biggest wishes I have is that we acknowledge and learn from failure as opposed to try to avoid failure. You know, and like the person who was called upon to present the slides and failed at a couple of them, you know, it isn't to be able to shift into learning, you have to shift away from judging. And if I'm a contractor jumping into a design situation, I don't want to be judged. You know, I am not, the reason I'm not comfortable is because I'm afraid I'm going to screw up and make a mistake and everybody's going to know. And that is a massive inhibitor to learning. So my wish for our industry would be to help with that shift towards learning. And it's a very difficult thing.
I have one. What do the architects think about Lean method? Because if you involve all the other specialists in the very early stage of the project, architects can make art anymore.
Yeah.
Because all their ideas are cut down because it's not profitable or so on.
So the question is, what do architects think of Lean? And it is, when you invite all these other trades in, are you giving away your ability to work as an artist, which is to be inspirational? And it's architects don't like it. That's the easy answer. We, the Lean Construction Institute, the organization that produced that book, has commissioned a pretty thorough study of architects to try to align projects that have worked out well in the mind of an architect with behaviors and tools that are Lean, without calling them Lean. And we are just releasing that study now. I think it first went public a month ago. But lo and behold, the projects, we asked architects, we surveyed architects across the country, what do you consider successful? And then we looked at the attributes of the projects that they considered successful. And there's a phenomenal correlation between communication and involving other trades. So we're working to say, hey, look, the work that you like the best, you're doing this way now. So the reality is that if a key piece of being an artist, my training is as a fine artist. That's how I got started. I had a dual major in neuropsychology and fine arts. So in my world as an artist, the ability to work independently on my own and inspire the work that I'm doing is getting translated into inspiring a team of people. And I think the path forward for architects is to get away from being the brilliant person working in a cave in isolation and into the brilliant person working with a group and able to work more effectively and at a bigger scale and more complexity. But for sure, it's a challenge. My peers in the United States, there are a lot of them that are like, this is eroding my ability to work as an artist, and I don't want it. So it's a challenge. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Nüüd enne ütleb kiired sõnad ka administratiivsete asjade koha peal.
Nüüd siis jah, mõningad täpsustused. Meeldiv on üheldatud kasulikuga. Juhin tähelepanu nendele inimestele, kes on siin selleks, et saada ka need 6,5 punkti täiendkoolitust, mis on vajalik inseneridele ja arhitektidele, siis me väljastame teile need tunnistused elektroonselt teie e-aadressidele, aga ainult nendele inimestele, kelle registreerimise lehel on ka teie allkiri, et te siin olete. Nii et viimasel hetkel tulijad, võib-olla tartlased, kes jõudsid siia, kontrollige, et meile jääks teie allkiri siin olemisest. Siin on 2 liiki inimesi. On inimesi, kes on tasunud tänase ürituse eest ja on inimesed, kes on tudengitena saamas tarkust. Need inimesed, kes on tasunud, teid ootab kohvipaus 4. korrusel ja ka soe lõuna 4. korrusel. Tudengid aga laskuge palun keldrisse, seal ootab teid tudengi tasemel kohvik. Olgem täpsed 11.20, et olla päevakavas nii nagu siiamaani.